Hi dear, thank you so much for watching this program. As I promised, we will talk about Moise Katumbi speech, the President Moise Katumbi speech, what he said on 3rd of January. So this speech was addressed to Congolese. It was a message that is sent to Congolese people. So I have with me the expert, Monte McMurchy, professor of university, who mostly is my guest here in this program, discussing about DRC Congo situation. So Mr. Monte, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I'm looking forward to returning back to Congo later this month because in Toronto, it is extremely cold.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Monte, thank you so much. I hope that you come back in Africa. It looks like you like Africa.
I do. The people are what motivates me because the resource, which is the most precious and treasured, is the human capital.
Okay. So how do you see Congo? How do you see Congo as a nation? How do you see Congo?
I see Congo, a nation rife in potential, but unfortunately, due to the leadership and corruption, has been grossly mismanaged, and the potential in terms of human capital is sorely undervalued, underused. And I listened very carefully several times to Moise Katumbi's talk, as you said, which was delivered yesterday, and I do have some comments.
Okay, let us listen first to what Moise Katumbi said. Let's watch.
À l'aube d'une nouvelle année, je vous souhaite à chacun de vous une bonne et heureuse année 2024. Qui dit année nouvelle, dit résolution personnelle. Nous venons de vivre ensemble une histoire qui nous lie à jamais. Je vous remercie tous pour la grande confiance que vous m'avez manifestée tout au long de la campagne où nous avons pu nous parler et dresser de plans d'avenir. Je remercie tous mes alliés pour leur soutien. Je vous remercie tous pour le vote massif que vous m'avez accordé. Au cours de nos rencontres, j'ai constaté que nous voulions tous un avenir meilleur pour nos familles, nos enfants. La sécurité pour tous, la santé, les écoles, l'eau, l'électricité, de routes, de ponts, de bacs, de l'emploi, le salaire décent, un logement. Toutes ces choses simples qui devraient faire la dignité de tout Congolais, nous en rêvons. Je n'ai pas oublié les espoirs que vous avez placés en moi. Je n'ai pas oublié non plus vos exigences sur la qualité de celui qui doit gouverner notre pays. Vous me l'avez clairement exprimé. Vous voulez que le pays soit dirigé par des hommes intègres, ayant le sens de la justice et du bien commun. Vous exigez qu'on vous rende compte et qu'on vous associe plus étroitement à la gestion du pays, tant au niveau national, provincial que local. Lors de cette campagne, j'ai pris vis-à-vis de vous un engagement, celui de changer le Congo. Je n'entends pas le trahir. Depuis le braquage électoral du 20 décembre, dont nous sommes tous victimes, nous vivons une énième usurpation de notre souveraineté. De partout, j'entends monter des cris d'indignation, des cris de contestation, des cris de colère, des cris d'exaspération. Au mépris de l'expression populaire, un régime issu de la fraude, de la tricherie et du fait accompli veut s'imposer à nous. Il n'en sera jamais question, absolument jamais. À l'aube de cette année nouvelle, au cours de laquelle nous aspirons à la paix, à la sécurité, à la stabilité et au développement, nous savons tous que nous ne pourrons jamais bâtir une nation apaisée et tisser le lien du vivre ensemble sur le mensonge, la fraude et la tricherie. Nous ne pourrons jamais bâtir un pays, un État, une nation sans retrouver notre fierté qui appelle à pouvoir choisir librement nos dirigeants. Le serment de liberté que nous ont légué le Père fondateur repose sur le lien sacré qui doit exister entre le peuple congolais et ses représentants. Tromper notre peuple ne fait qu'aggraver la lancinante crise de légitimité qui perdure dans notre pays et nous fait passer à côté de grands espoirs. Mes chers compatriotes, à vous tous qui avez porté vos suffrages sur moi, à vous tous qui savez qu'ensemble, un nouveau Congo est possible, je vous fais le serment de ne jamais vous abandonner. Nous entrons aujourd'hui dans une autre phase de notre quête pour la liberté. Nous devons ensemble soustraire notre pays des mains de la prédation, de la corruption, de la gabegie et de toutes les injustices. C'est pourquoi, avec d'autres compatriotes, avec les forces sociales et politiques et prise de liberté, un sursaut citoyen est nécessaire. Sauver notre démocratie est devenu plus qu'une priorité. C'est un devoir et je ne faillirai pas à mon devoir citoyen. Raison pour laquelle je vous demande de ne pas baisser le bras, de ne pas céder au découragement ou au pessimisme, mais bien au contraire, de reprendre la marche que nous avons engagée ensemble. Parce que rien n'est fini, tout est encore possible. Et ce nouveau Congo, nous y avons droit et nous ne laisserons à personne le droit de briser le rêve que nous avons de le bâtir ensemble. Notre Constitution nous invite à nous opposer à tout groupe d'individus qui veut prendre le pouvoir et s'y maintenir en dehors de la volonté du peuple congolais. Pour notre dignité et l'avenir de nos enfants, nous sommes tenus de souscrire à tout le moyen qu'elle met à notre disposition pour refuser la fraude et l'installation de la dictature. Peuple congolais, tenons bon, restons mobilisés. Le temps de l'action est venu. Par des actions pacifiques, démocratiques, nous allons résister et reconquérir notre droit le plus légitime, celui de faire échec à la fraude et de reprendre en main notre destin avec les dirigeants de notre choix. Amis partenaires, frères africains, les Congolais n'ont-ils pas le droit de vraies élections? Dites-moi, dans quel pays au monde l'on retrouve des machines à voter entre les mains de candidats du pouvoir et on se précipite à proclamer et à féliciter un vainqueur aux élections? Dites-moi le nom de ces pays. Citez-moi un seul pays au monde où l'on décide de prolonger la période des élections de 11 heures à 6 ou 7 jours et on se précipite ensuite à féliciter le vainqueur. Citez-moi un seul pays dans le monde où on proclame le vainqueur sur la base de bureaux de vote et de machines à voter dont on ne connaît même pas le nombre au jour de l'élection. Personne ne peut s'ériger en complice de cette fraude électorale que nous accepterons jamais. Que vive la République démocratique du Congo, unie, libre et prospère.
Professor, you watched this video with me. What you have to say about what Moise Katumbi said?
First of all, he spoke very clearly, and that I am impressed with. And the words he used were what I term positive affirmation. He was labeling what he considered to be the issues and the problems. And he dealt with the corruption, the lack of leadership. He made reference to how flawed in terms of process procedure the elections were. But he made absolutely no comment in terms of contestation, which I believe he is not contesting. However, I do have some concerns. Words are nice, but when he was governor in Katanga, what did he do and how did he leave his province after his governorship? Because the issues are large, the issues are significant, and it's very, very easy to criticize. But unfortunately, as incoming President Tshisekedi is going to discover, and he already has discovered in his first term, which agreed was most flawed, he has yet to admit, but it was most flawed, the 2018 election. He did secure the majority of votes in this last election, notwithstanding that the Senate was biased in favor of the status quo, as in the governance system. And that is truly unfortunate, because you look at the voter turnout, you look at the plurality that he received, 73%, not quite Kagame-like, which is 99%. So I suspect Senate leadership did exercise some restraint or consideration to make it putatively legitimate. However, there are several aspects what I term electoral legitimacy. How was the vote calibrated? How many citizens were able to vote? And how was the process conducted? Mr. Katumbi did say that the election time period should have been elongated. To that, I don't disagree. I submit that due to the issues, it should have been at least 48 hours nonstop. But most importantly, the election design, the election implementation should have commenced 4 years ago, which would have resulted in an election more efficient and more effective. Whether that would have added to the government, I don't know, but I suspect, and I say this with the utmost trepidation, and I say this with insight, learned, earned judgment, the DRC state is not interested in having a contested election. Their preference would be for an election that is putatively sanctioned by the national observer groups and by perhaps election tourists, and I'll talk about that later, so long as that their candidate is secured in victory. My issue is that you're not going to see too much change. Felix Tshisekedi is president, but how much independence does he have? I am firmly convinced, as with his predecessor, the external involvement is senior and significant. And you look at to the extractive mineral consortia in terms of what they have deals. He makes reference, as does Mr. Katumbi, that we need to stamp out corruption. Corruption is ingrained within the ethos. It needs to start at age 3 in education, when young boys and young girls understand the concept of sharing and helping those children that are less able and weak, and it migrates up through the system. It's a generational construct, because I'm fully sympathetic, because Congo, in terms of infrastructure vis-a-vis employment, is fragile and work. And then to gain what I call constructive work, it's either with the international companies or the government. There's very little what I call independent entities that are paying taxes, that have autonomy. And therein is the problem. You have an educated youth cadre that are looking for work. So they buy into the governance system. So then they are buying into maintenance of the status quo.
We follow up word by word what he say. The word is very important in this time that Congolese just voted. So the word is very important in terms of what has been told, so that this can bring a peace in Congo. Do you see the same Moise Katumbi like joining the government or cooperating with President Tshisekedi?
If I were to speak to Mr. Katumbi, which at present I'm not, this is what I would suggest. I would encourage him strongly via interlocutors to approach the Tshisekedi government in terms of saying, I'm prepared to assist, but I need to have a position which is substantive, ideally in the finance or mining sector. That's where the power is. And this is what I plan to do with my responsibility, because I'm going to try to walk the talk. I have already expressed to the people that we need to calm down. I have expressed to the people the value in health and education and housing and employment. I say to you, Mr. President, allow me the chance to show my goodwill where I will speak to you in truth to power without fear and favor for the betterment of the state. All it's going to do is make you a stronger, more effective president. And now, sir, the ball is in your court. I wait to hear your answer.
Congo is actually in stage that people want a peace. Last day, the activists from Goma, they called for protests, they called for people to go out. Nobody went out. It seemed like Congolese people, they want their country to be in peace now because the peace is very important for the country. Elections sometimes can be in trouble, but Congolese people looks to be now mature in terms of democracy. Why did you see that? What did you say about that?
I am very pleased. And now I would provide some advice, suggestion to the president. The people do want peace, but the issue is that the externalities do not want the people to be quiet. And I'm talking now to President Kagame of Rwanda. Stay out, stand down, do not interfere. All you are doing is creating destruction among the weak and vulnerable. And to President Tshisekedi, I would say that go on national television and speak that I want peace and prosperity, and I am now stating, I'm not pleading, because I have been duly elected, notwithstanding what I call transactional flaws in the election, but I'm going to prove to you that I'm going to be a servant of you, the people. And therefore, I'm going to empower the military to go in as policemen to preserve, to protect, and any subordinate will be held accountable. And I'm going to hold my generals accountable for their quality of the troops, that they are there not to rape, not to pillage, but to serve and to assist and to keep the peace. And to MONUSCO, what we need from you and what we want from you are your resources, your logistical resources. We are prepared to govern ourselves. And I thank you politely, but now get out.
What you saw, your analysis, the Congo peace is coming. The Congo peace is coming because now if the President Tshisekedi can speak or we can talk to all nations about the development of the country, the peace of the Congo, and if Kagame can step away finally. So how this country can secure its border so that what happened in the past should not happen again? What Congolese should do?
The border is established from what I understand, and now it needs to be secured in terms of what I call border control, in terms of how people get in, how minerals are imported, if any, or exported. So you want to have what I call the private industry or the private entailments outed, that they are not creating calm. They are creating dissension. And that is why you need to have a police. But they need to be compensated. They need to be treated with respect and dignity and professional. So thereby they need to be responsible as professionals. And that is longer term. But the leadership is basically providing the oil to calm by walking the talk. The president may need to make a personal trip out to Eastern DRC and walk among the population, probably with security, but he needs to show himself. He needs to say, I'm going to dedicate resources that you are going to be secured for education, so girls will not be molested, that they will be empowered intellectually to be creative. I'm going to introduce very strict occupational health and safety measures into the mining sector. So those workers are going to be compensated for health as well as financially. They will not be exploited. These are my brothers, these are my sisters, and they are to be treated with the utmost respect. So if they're going to work for you under the aegis of your organization, you are going to be responsible for what harm you create. This is what I promise now. It may make things more difficult, but that is the way. However, if you look at the backside, the pressures are going to be enormous. I mean, Felix Tshisekedi could be very well a marionette. Uneasy is the head that wears the crown, to quote Shakespeare. And that is what I term moral courage. I heard Moise Katumbi say some very good words. Now he needs to walk the talk, as I've stated earlier on. Now President Tshisekedi needs to walk the talk as well.
Great. So I had the chance to speak with his spokesman, the spokesman of President Felix Tshisekedi, Mr. Eric Yindu, who explained in large what are the vision for President Tshisekedi for the 5 coming days. So when it comes about peace, how President Tshisekedi can send a strong message to opposition like Martin Fayulu and Moise Katumbi, who have been mostly in peace way, so that the Congo can unite it again.
Invite them to join you. And the same thing with Dr. Dennis. Encourage him to participate because Dr. Dennis has expertise in medical health care. He needs to be empowered. That clinics that he is operating need to be expanded, not only in the Eastern DRC, but in different sectors throughout DR Congo. Include the people that initially have opposed you. Invite them to participate and say, I cannot do it alone. I need to have participation because I will not be seeking another election because according to the Constitution, which I respect, this is it for me. I have 5 years, so I need you to help me. If you can empower yourself, you're going to walk the talk. And let's make Congo great. Let's make Congo strong. It's going to take a lot of effort, and it's not going to need to be public. And I'm going to hold my senior staff, my ministers, accountable in terms of how they finance, because there's going to be transparency in terms of books. I want to know, and the public needs to know, what are your assets and how were these assets obtained? Legitimately, or shall we say in the gray zone? That is going to put a rifle bullet right through the heart or the nexus what is hobbling Congo. That is corruption adumbrated by weak leadership. You start to focus on that, you will then inspire and empower the people. Support education, support healthcare delivery and service, support infrastructure in terms of road building by providing employment, and pay a wage that is fair. And you're going to hold all accounts, all contracts to public scrutiny. That there's going to be what I call an equitable fairness because you want to enter into a contractual relationship by which it's win-win on everyone's side. Because you want to have it positive on those that are supplying the services, but there's a balance. How much is too much? We have an issue in Canada and the United States where the 1% are pulling in hundreds, if not thousands, of percentage greater than the worker. That the cleavages are becoming very, very intense. Of course, in Africa, it's been so for a long time, and now you've seen what's happening. It could very well happen here in North America. So I implore the president, or the president-elect for second or first term, depending on nomenclature, I implore his leading opposition candidates to participate or to make an offer to participate, but they need to be given significant roles in finance and mining because they both have skills. And then, of course, they'll be held accountable. Make them part of the solution and let's see how things fly. Congo's potential in Africa is absolutely awesome. You have a population, and I know full well, they are highly intelligent. They are hardworking. They are motivated. And as you said, sir, earlier on, they want peace, but they want peace with dignity, by which everyone is valued, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of creed, regardless of class, to be treated equally by the law. And then in terms of the judiciary, it needs to be made absolutely independent, particularly the Constitutional Court. The judges should be selected based on academic legal principles, not because they will be friendly to the government. There needs to be independence. The same thing with Seni. Right now, Seni needs new leadership. You need to chop everyone. planning for the next election needs to start.
What strong message that this election sent to the world when it comes about the democracy in DRC Congo?
The election conduct illustrates a significant level of what I deem incompetence. It also illustrates that when you have people that are friends of the government, there's a built-in bias, whether atavistic or not. You thereby need to ensure or to encourage national civil society organizations to participate in the electoral process, commencing with the design and then subsequent with the implementation. You need to empower the local chiefs, the local leaders, and allocate resources. The last thing you need are what I term international election observers / tourists. They do absolutely nothing. And the ones that receive money from US aid, all they're doing is embellishing their own prerequisites. They're not adding to what I call the national social civic civil capital. And yes, if they want to come in, they need to be tied, and with all monies public to go to national civil society organizations, because it's the national civil society organization that is going to provide the test, holding the election management board to account. Congo or any other African state, and I speak because I know, they can run very effective, efficient elections. And let me tell you a story. When I was in Zimbabwe at one time, year 2000, the Zimbabwean Election Committee ran an absolute pitch perfect election. The problem was who could enter into the polling confines. That was unfortunately rigidly controlled. And my comment was, on one level, the elections were technically correct, but in a greater weave, they cannot be held to be free, fair, and reflecting the wish of the people. So there are different variances. You can hold elections, but if you deny people entering to vote, is that a proper election? It's an election that is hobbled.
We watch and we listen careful about Moise Katumbi speech. There is a site where he talk more about peace, he talk about democracy, he talk about the legitimacy of the vote. Don't you see that the opposition should understand that the election was a game? Now they have to turn the page so that they can build the Congo for everybody.
There is so much riding on the victorious candidate and the victorious candidate's party. It's an opportunity to make money. When you take that ingredient of money making out of the matrix, it will change or the shift what I call political, social, economic publics. And you need to have people now like Moise Katumbi and Martin Fayulu to speak up saying, yes, we disagree with the election process and procedure, but we recognize that Felix Tshisekedi did win, not necessarily with 73%, but he did gain the plurality of the vote. And now we in the opposition must deem ourselves the loyal opposition, by which we will speak truth to power. Allow us the opportunity to assist you in terms of providing good governance. And let's see what happens next time. But we need to have a CENI that is going to be independent, ethical, professional, and competent.
How do you see the next coming days of the future of Congo?
Since not being in DRC at this moment, I'm unable to gauge. Actually, I'm only going by what I am hearing, what I'm seeing, and what I'm reading from international and national press in English and in French. I don't speak Lingala. So my insights are that the candidates that did not succeed, they need to accept on one level that they were defeated. However, that does not mitigate that they cannot make representation that the election process administratively was profoundly incompetent. To that, they should be speaking. However, now they need to say, we are going to show to the people of Congo that we too, part of the elite, can be good citizens, but we are going to hold the government to account. So let us watch us because the next month is going to be very, very significant because peace needs to prevail. And what will happen is Paul Kagame will be very irritated. He will be very frustrated because he will be denied the capacity to extract resources. And when you have the people united, recognizing that Congo is a nation state, and I underline the word national, which is exuberance, which is the emotional. The state is what I call the administrative infrastructure, hence nation state. You want to ensure that the infrastructure is going to be sound. It's going to take time, but already what has been expressed, the people want no violence. I mean, even they have seen what's happening right now in Gaza. That is absolutely atrocious. The last thing you want is an entity such as Hamas that are predicated solely on willful destruction.
When president is elected, we have many congratulations for all over the world. We noticed that mostly African country was the first to congratulate President Tshisekedi, but most of the powerful country, they are still on hold. Why is that? Is that because they are not happy?
I believe it goes back to 2018, when prematurely the United States sanctified the election. And that was an absolute faux pas, because speaking to very significant people in the State Department and USA, they recognize now that the 2018 election was profoundly flawed. Felix Tshisekedi did not win. He did not even come in second. At best, he was third. To be honest with you, I don't even know. Very few people know, because the ballots have either been destroyed or put into place. They have not been seen. Right now, the West is watching. And if the opposition has a role, if they can pull together and say, we're going to work with you, Mr. President, but we're going to work with you on what we term normative terms in governance. It's not going to be personal. It's not going to be how much I can take. It's going to be governance in service. Then I suspect the West will come on and they will endorse the system, and we are watching, and then they will provide assistance. It's going to be all calculated and tabulated. They're waiting, watching, and seeing. And right now, so far, the auguries are good, because the violence, as you have said, has been marginal to naught in the East. Let's pray, let's hope it continues. But it's going to require these two leading opposition candidates to speak up now. And I also include Dr. Dennis, the Nobel laureate, because he can use his Nobel laureate as an exemplar in saying, I may not be happy with the outcome because of the process, but I'm going to accept the results. However, I'm going to hold Mr. President Tshisekedi to account in terms of healthcare, education, housing, and employment deliverables. And if he can do that, he will have my unmitigated assistance and support.
We know that the Western still come back to that 2018 election, saying that President Tshisekedi was not elected, but there is not any evidence proof that this was the truth until we have what Colonel Nanga said. But until now, Colonel Nanga doesn't demonstrated that yes, Tshisekedi was not the winner. That means it's just talking without a proof. There is no proof that President Tshisekedi didn't been elected on this election. Why is it that the international community is still saying that he was not the winner, but until now, no one showing the proof?
Senko deployed many people throughout Congo to do an external tabulation in terms of how the votes were inputted. They watched and they observed, and in some polling stations, the chief presiding officer released the results, poll by poll. And of course, the internet was turned off in terms of control. And any time a government turns off the internet, that means they're fearful. They want to control the message. And that, to me, when I was there in 2018, raised many, many flags. And the results initially did not favor the candidate that was anointed by Kabila. He did abysmal. There was extreme blowback. And when the results were coming in, Central HQ were very concerned. So they buried them. and they held off for many, many days. There's too much going on. If the results were open, why did they not release them poll by poll? And if they did that, there will be a counter evidence calling them up. Because if you make one small lie, that may lead on to bigger lies. So when you tell the truth, you tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And that is what some very smart people provided the Electoral Commission at that point. You either give away the whole thing or you shut the box completely. There's no in between.
Great. So I spoke to some political people and some African people about how the president in Africa should be elected, who will be responsible for the election, and who will be responsible for them to be in power. Most of the analysis say that Africa needs to take over their own democracy. They want to choose their president on their own way. They want to establish their democracy on own way with the respect of the West. Why West should always choose who they want for Africa? What do you have to say about that?
With your statement, I could not agree with you more. You, or the people that have spoken to you concerning this, are absolutely correct. Elections are an internal matter for each state. However, it needs to be put to the people in terms of how you're going to craft the vote. I mean, there are different methods, because many years ago, before we in the West came into Africa, and I say this, we truly mucked things up. Elections were conducted under customary law rule. They looked to a man, and generally it was a man that they found, usually a big man, who was strong, but he had good character. He ruled with respect and did not favor a particular entity, and he was deemed a chief. And it was structured differently. Elections are a process. All processes are flawed, but it needs to be internal, and that's what I harp upon. And I've said this right from the get-go when I was with the United Nations, whether it be with UNMIL in Liberia, UNMIC in Kosovo, or in various other countries. In Afghanistan, the same thing. The elections need to be conducted by nationals. And if we are internationals in a fragile state, our obligation, and if we have any obligation, is to provide for what I term personal security, allowing the people to attend unmolested, to be expressive in their own choice, private, personal, without any form of attenuation, internal or external. Allow the people to decide among themselves. But yes, there are normative constraints. You don't bribe, you don't use force. And then you accept the results, which is why the election management body must be deemed to be competent, be ethical, be professional, and absolutely independent. Because when people trust the institution that is conducting the election, they will respect the results. Congo has a ways to go. There is no reason why not next time they cannot run an election that will be truly respected and endorsed. So it needs to start now. Planning for the next election needs to commence now. But the people need to be absolutely independent from the government. They need to be rigorous people, whether from the university, trained in law, perhaps former diplomats, clergymen, social workers, churchmen, a wide canvas as they pool together to create or select the management team that's going to conduct the elections, and learning from the past. And the machines are as good as the people behind them. And above all, you must have full transparency, impartiality, that observers, whether they are by the political party, whether they are by an entity, they need to be allowed, all agreed upon prior to, so you don't fill the voting area with 100 observers and the voter cannot get in. It's pretty stuffy because it's very hot and humid. And if people agree on that, it will be more seamless. And yes, there are mistakes. And also, to hold an election on one day in a place like DRC is virtually impossible. I mean, we can barely do it in Canada, but it's done. I would encourage and I would suggest 48 hours minimum, nonstop. When the polls open, say at 0700 one day, they remain open for the next 48 hours.
So I've received a lot of questions from a lot of people all over the world, some African country. When you say when Africans say that they should work on their own democracy so that the West should not involve, why are you think that this is a corruption way to think like that?
Well, involved in my instruction or teaching, I only ask the difficult questions and I empower national and national academics. And even though I may be the white guy and they want to come to me, and I said, don't come to me. I don't know very much. Look to your people. All I'm going to do is provoke you intellectually. The only violence that I support is what I term intellectual violence, posing the tough questions, demanding the answers, that there's very little that is absolute, except in terms of human equity. And it's an ongoing process. And that is what I call the education matrix. And then it migrates into civics and what is good citizenship. Why it needs to start literally at age 3, 4, 5, and 6. When you have young boys going to school in their uniforms, all scrubbed, happy. They learn to share when they play. You share. You treat everyone with dignity. And it migrates through the system. And you need to pull out that money and power is through who you know, not what you are. It's endemic, even here in Canada, and I'm not disparaging it. Of course, you need to reward in terms of loyalty, but there's a level. Otherwise, how are you going to have people that are going to volunteer many hours to your campaign? You need to offer them something, but it needs to be public. And that, to me, is what is accountability. It cannot be hidden. And then the people can measure, okay, he earned it, he merits that. Fair enough, I'm going to allow that. But when you find someone coming in with next to nothing, and then after a while he's a multimillionaire, that really is pushing it hard. Because if he or she is gaining all this money, someone is being denied, someone is losing. And that is going into the weaker type of what I call sub-industry. Water, roads, education, healthcare.
Okay, so what makes different in terms of democracy and political between African people, the way they do politics with the West?
The differences are marginal to naught because power is power is power, and it's how you use it. And sadly, in Africa, they have used it and have taken the worst examples in terms of when their party is in power, their people live well. Thereby, it's very reluctant for them to give up power. So they have delay, or as Kabila said, glissement. And how long does it go? Again, you need to have a parliament that's functional. And the parliamentarians are very well paid. Perhaps they're even overpaid. I would have fewer parliamentarians in Kinshasa, but emboldened regional offices where you have support staff. And you have a very few that are political party apparatchiks, and the others are public servants. And they know their constituency. They know the people in terms of addressing the issue. And then after an election, you may have the political staff leaving, but the support staff that know the area stays. And they can assist the incoming parliamentarian or the incoming president. You need to have a dedicated public service.
If you have to send a message to opposition, Congolese opposition, those who has been in the opposition, Martin Fayulu, Moise Katumbi, Denis Mukwege just entered the politics now. What do you have to say to them? How they can make themselves strong so that if there is a next election, they may win?
You have done well in Congo life. You have been afforded many privileges. Now it's time for you to use your privilege in assisting those less fortunate. That may mean saying to the government, we respect the vote. We may not necessarily endorse how it was conducted, but we respect that. We want to assist. Allow us to assist in a meaningful way. We will hold you to account because these are our priorities, and you list them off. Education, healthcare, housing, employment, infrastructure. Do this, we will be there to support you. And of course, come next time, you're not going to be a candidate, so it's in your interest to do right by the state. And this is my message to Felix Tshisekedi. You have absolutely very little to fear. You're not up for re-election. Show yourself to the people to be a national statesman, that you are truly a servant of the people. It may require full declaration of your resources along with your immediate family, but it starts from the top. It may hurt, and there may be some accounting issues. I suspect that may be a bridge too far, because I suspect there are certain hidden things. And I can go into the Kabila family in terms of what their holdings are. They are totally engrossed, and they did not earn them honestly. They were acquired through other means. And at the same time, they need to stand strong for Congo at the expense of internationals. Fair is fair. A fair return, we're not going to disavow. We need to encourage you to invest, and we're going to have a rate of return. It's going to be public. The contract is going to be public. Who gets what and why, and that is going to be what I call the golden mean, holding everyone to account.
Great. So you watch all the speech of Moise Katumbi. How did you describe Moise Katumbi? What kind of political man he is?
And I'll say this directly to him. He presents very well. He's extremely articulate. He's an intelligent man. He has command, presence. My only query is, does he mean what he says? Time will tell. Actions speak louder than words. But regardless of what I call antecedents in terms of what is his citizenship, I mean, they use that as a ploy. That needs to be sorted out now. So it does not deal with the election. I mean, that is something for what the constitutional people need to decide. But he has potential, and I encourage him to practice strong civics, walk his talk. I applaud the speech, and I say to you, sir, Monsieur Katumbi, I applaud you, and I look forward to meeting you in person in Congo.
President Felix Tshisekedi may be throning in Congo after being declared family by a constitution court. How did you see those things going?
For Mr. Tshisekedi, he needs to understand that he has to surround himself with people that are bright and clever and tell him what he does not want to hear so long as they can justify it. But the prism that he can set only as the chief executive of the state is that I'm going to have a governance in service, in public service. And these are my no-goes. It's going to be open. We're going to mitigate corruption. We cannot stamp it out, but we're going to mitigate it as best as we can. And I want my ministers, the prime minister, I mean, it's a bicameral system of government, and I want my prime minister, whether it's him or her, to have an effective cadre of ministers who are going to be dedicated to service.
Great. So you've been analysis politics for a long time. You know some politician people. What do you see, or maybe suspect that he may be the next prime minister? Which profile you think that he will be good to help Felix Tshisekedi for his second term as a prime minister?
I'm not going to suggest any names, but I'm going to suggest what I call characteristics. The individual, whether it be a he or she, needs to be independent, needs to be competent, needs to have what I call intellectual horsepower, and needs to understand public administration through learned work. That would be the type of candidate. And he or she needs not to be afraid to speak up to the president in truth. And the president needs to acknowledge that the prime minister may serve at my pleasure, but I want to surround myself with people that are competent. So I'm looking to you, Mr. or Madam Prime Minister, to provide me with your unreserved assistance and hopefully support for the governance structure. Other than that, I'm not going to mention any names.
Great. Congo never had a female prime minister, a woman in the politics that play a role of a prime minister. Do you think if President Tshisekedi can promote women, will really help Congo to be strong enough? As they say, if you take care of women, the woman can build the nations. You think that Congo may also promote political women to get a top responsibility like the parliament and the senatory?
I am committed, and I always have advanced in regions post-conflict, gender equality. To me, that is non-negotiable. And if Tshisekedi can find a female competent, and all I will say, look at the disaster that has happened at one of the preeminent universities in the world, in the United States. And that was just a train trek waiting to happen. It was too fast, it was too quick, and conducted for the wrong reasons. And the blowback was intense. That's all I'm going to say. You want people that are competent, that have ethics, that have integrity. Other than that, regardless of what. I mean, you need to place, of course, females in position of power, but you want your prime minister to be a man or a woman that is totally qualified and not someone who is Potemkin, because they can sniff it out. The worst thing would be to appoint a woman and she's recognized as being Potemkin, un apparat, as they would say en français, someone who is light. You want him or her to be absolutely competent, to be trenched.
Great. My last question. You've been a part of expert in this program. You've been empowering this program. How do you see this program? How this program can help Congo to develop its democracy and to alarm everything badly or corruption that can happen in Congo through this program?
One of the pillars in any successful democratic state is an open public media. And all the journalists have courage. And in some states, it's more difficult than ever. Congo is not a free state. I'm going to be very, very blunt. It's a very liminal, weak, democratic type of state. It's rigidly controlled. I'm not saying it cannot be breached, but it's people like you and your fellow journalists, your moral courage, and I applaud you. You are speaking or advancing truth to power. I know it's not easy. I know resources are not forthcoming, but that's another pillar that I would encourage. How can you advance? Because good journalism actually calms. Good journalism actually mitigates potential violence. And it needs to be grounded in fact-based evidence, not spurious. You need to deal with what evidence or stories that have traction, not making up stories. And so to you, and I applaud you, what you're doing, all I will say, bien fait, most excellent, and I encourage you onwards and upwards.
What role media play in this election?
They played an important role. They could have played more of a role, but then again, that goes to Seni, because Seni was managing. And I've made reference in my writing in terms of the center of Bozolo. I mean, it was well fitted out, but the messages were all controlled by an internal group. The media need to be more involved. They are not the problem. They are part of the solution, because you need to have whoever is the spokesman, whether for the government or whether for the election institution, they need to have the facts and deliver the facts honestly, clearly, and build up trust and support. Because elections are not an aspect to be hidden. They are totally open, and there's nothing to hide. When you start hiding, the smell rises. That's why when you release poll constraint, you can only do it all or nothing, because you have one lie, there are other lies. It's the small lies that get you down.
Mr. Martin, thank you so much. We hope to have you next time for our program.
I thank you, sir. I wish you a good day.
Thank you. Hi, dear. Thank you so much. You still a part of our program. You can feel how important the analysis for African, for Congo, for all African nations is so important for us. If you have a suggestion, you have a hot story, you have a story that you need us to bring a guest to debate on this topic, we are open for you. Whatever you are, whenever you are, for African development, for African democracy, for African transparency in terms of election and leadership, watch this program. We will always bring expert for you, will be clear and more focused on the words that will be a solution for many politicians. We thank you for following this program, and we hope to see you for next time. Goodbye for now.